Welcome, everyone, to the Learning Playground. This is a podcast where we explore how learning happens in the wild outside of all the corporate red tape, where learning gets messy, it gets fun and creative, but most of all, it gets human. And today I'm excited to have our guest, Miranda Haney, who is a coffee educator and the founder of Barista Friend right here in Austin, Texas. Miranda, excited to
Thank
have you.
you.
This is our second go around of this, and I'm just very grateful to have you back.
Absolutely, second draft is always the best anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, maybe you can kick us off by just telling us a little bit about yourself and telling us about Barista Friend.
Sure. So today I'm actually in my workshop here in South Austin. I am a coffee educator. So Barista Friend is a mobile coffee training service. So what I do is I travel around town and train baristas at cafes and restaurants. And I also do in-home private lessons and public coffee classes right here in the workshop. This workshop is actually inside of a collaborative roasting space. So a lot of local roasters use this equipment and this space to roast their coffee, and then I rent out this little barista corner, and that's where the magic happens for me. So, yeah.
Well, I definitely appreciate you adding all the context
Yeah.
around, like, with the environment and just really pulling that into the story. It's really exciting. I know, like, you like with Three Barista Friend, you host everything from like Latte Art 101 to Coffee Brewing Science. Just curious, like, how all these different classes really fit into the bigger mission that you've kind of taken on of helping others develop their craft the way that you have over the years.
Sure, yeah. Well, Barista Friend really started as the mission, I guess, of what I was after was trying to help people to be more present and more engaged with coffee. And coffee is not just like one thing. I think from the outside, it may look like cafe is like it is what it is, but within that, there's so many interwoven parts and moving parts. And each one of these elements is in itself a craft that you can master. So to be a good barista, is to understand all of these elements and, you know, be able to competently complete the task of steaming milk, but then also get creative with it and interact with customers while you're doing it. I mean, there's so much that goes into it. So, a lot of times, too, just for the professional side of things, there's not super high quality training at a lot of small businesses, not because they don't want to. I think it's just because resources and time and space, honestly. A lot of places don't have a dedicated space that's outside of the cafe where they can create a good learning environment, right? A lot of it is on the job training. So, Barista Friend was my way to be like, let's get out of the fray and really, take a deep breath, be here in this moment, drink this coffee, play with this machine, and we can learn together. And then that extends to just the growing number of home baristas out there, especially in Austin, who took an interest in it. So I try not to like create any barriers that this is fun for everyone, whether it's your actual job or just a hobby.
Yeah. No, well,
Yeah.
I will say I've had the opportunity of taking one of your classes just as more of a hobbyist and just wanting to get into the latte art world. I feel like that's a really good entry point for most, and probably
Yeah.
maybe what draws most people
It
to
is the
classes at
most
first. But
popular, yeah.
yeah. But then you like I absolutely fell in love with the experience. So just, we talked about before, like in the last go around of this podcast, so just like it felt like almost like seeing behind the curtain of like everything that is going on, like in this building where you're roasting beans, you're teaching classes, and it almost felt like I wasn't supposed to be there, which added to this like I don't know, it just added to the experience and added to the energy while I was there. But I left that class and came home and immediately bought an espresso machine, like set up the counter. And Veronica, my wife and the kids now know like that coffee counter. If there's anything in my house that stays clean, it's that coffee counter because like that's the first moment in the morning is like waking up and grabbing an espresso or making a drink
Absolutely.
and just
You
like
have to
starting the
have
day off
that
right. So
space.
like I
Yeah.
just kind of put on the blinders for everything else happening that the kids leave around the
I
house.
love
Uh,
that.
but but it did create a really positive impact on me. So definitely was fun. Yeah, so I'd really like to dig into your origin story a little bit. I'd like to
Okay.
understand when did you like maybe you can tell us a little bit about your like your first barista job and then the moment also that you knew that you wanted to start teaching others about this?
Sure, yeah, so I grew up in Maryland, and I went to a state school on the Eastern Shore, which is a pretty rural community. I went to school for journalism, actually, and just needed a job to pay my bills, and I had romanticized working in a coffee shop since I was in high school, and I always wanted to work in a coffee shop. But actually at the time, Starbucks wouldn't hire me because I was too young, and I was so sad. I was like, "Ah," but I ended up, like, working other jobs. But anyway, when I got to college, I found this job at a family-run bakery. It was this really cute little house on a lake, and they were mostly known for their cinnamon rolls, but there was a guy that worked there named Jose who was very passionate barista, and he was really good at latte art, and he was very kind, and I was like, "I wanna work here, I wanna work with Jose," and luckily I did, and he taught me. He was so patient, such a kind teacher, and I remember he brewed me and this is such a I mean, I don't know how many people in this audience are, like, coffee people, but this is such an archetypal, like,
Probably e not to
coffee
interrupt,
person
probably
moment.
everyone.
Okay.
Everyone
Well,
yeah, I would say in education requires some coffee, whether it's decaf
yeah.
or not, but
Well,
we
it's
require
kind
it.
of a cliche in the specialty coffee world that you have your first, natural processed Ethiopia, like, your first coffee that tastes like blueberries, and you're like, "Wow, coffee's amazing," and I have to admit, I also had that exact same moment. It was a coffee from Counterculture, which is, like, a roaster out of, North Carolina, very popular specialty coffee roaster, but I had that coffee on a French press because what we were doing at the time was French pressing. We had these giant French presses, and the family didn't wanna, pay for an automatic brewing machine because it's very expensive. So we
Mm.
just would French press and pour it into a carafe for the day, so that was kinda funny. But yeah, Jose was really good at latte art, and he taught me, and he was very patient, and learning from him, I was like, "Okay, this is cool. I wanna be better at this, and I wanna eventually be able to share it the way that he shared it with me," because that moment of connection is it's still stuck with me. That was 10 plus years ago, and I still
Yeah.
think of that as definitely the moment.
I can't even remember last Tuesday, so that goes to tell you, like, sometimes some of these moments, they get ingrained. I mean, I have a similar story about, like, transitioning to my field and just there was one specific mentor that had taught me, the importance of education because, like, I don't know, growing up, I didn't come from a family that just, like, everyone you just follow that traditional path of high school to college and everything, and so I did a lot of exploring when I was in my 20s, and there's this one mentor that's like, the value of education in whatever setting, whether it's a technical school, whether it's art school,
Yeah,
whether it's
yeah.
university, it's really important. And then as soon as I started to just like immerse myself in that, I absolutely fell in love with it. And that's when I knew like my job needed to be in the space because I wanted to
Yeah.
make others feel that way. And so I
Sure, sure,
imagine
and
that's probably some of
yeah,
the
I
feeling
think
you had.
absolutely. I also think, like, that unfortunately, that small business went out of business, like, 3 months into working there, sadly, which is kind of, par for the course for a lot of these places, unfortunately, but then I jumped to a different coffee shop in town, and you know what? Like, going from being at a place where there was someone there who was interested in teaching others, to then going into a space where it felt like I was thrown in and didn't really have the same kind of support right off the bat, I also think that inspired me to be like, "Well, I could be that," "There's nobody here who's, like, taking a step up to teach, and I love teaching, and I feel really called to, like." And that was just latte art at the time, it wasn't really, like, anything I mean, maybe, like, how to pull shots quickly. It was like, "Can you do this fast?" And then latte art was just kind of a fun frou-frou thing at the end that the managers didn't really care about, but a couple of baristas started to, get on YouTube and stuff, but
Yeah. Now it's like everybody posts their latte art
Mhm.
on
Oh, yeah.
Instagram or TikTok and whether they're the ones that did it or they're receiving it
Ooh.
from a coffee shop, right?
Sure, sure. Oh,
Um,
yeah. I thought you meant, like, they were,
so
like, posting, I mean,
yeah, just like,
claiming
hey, I
something
made
as
yeah,
their own. I was like, "I guess that could happen, it's just
y
hands, we don't really
yeah.
know."
I should probably I think I'm gonna start doing that because no, but, so I'm curious about the moment in this story when you were put behind the espresso machine for the first time, and you were just kinda given the reins and said, "You know what? You know how busy we get? Keep up." Like, what was going through your head? How did you feel? Like, what did what did that whole experience turn out to be?
Yeah, so at that family bakery, I didn't really get to be, like, thrown into the as far as I remember, I mean, it was a long time ago, but I don't remember being, like, thrown into a busy shift ever, but I do when you ask me that question, my mind just immediately goes to this coffee shop I worked at. There were a couple locations. This was, like, a tiny drive-through, okay, in a rural community. We opened at 6 a.m., and there was a line of cars, like, at the drive-through ready for their coffee. And the espresso machine was behind the window, so it was like there was a barista that would stand at the window, and then behind that barista was the espresso machine, and then the drinks would go out the other window. So if you were in a car, you could not see what was going on inside the box. And I remember one day they threw me back there, and the counter I'm short, it's hard to tell, but I'm only 5'1". I know I give like 5'7", but I'm really 5'1".
You are given, like, 6 foot tall vibes
Thank
right
you.
now, so
Thank you. Yeah. No, but the counter was too tall for me. So it's, like,
okay.
not only stressful because I was just learning, but I, like, couldn't really see what was going on because the counter was too tall. And, oh my gosh, it was just like they would pass the drinks over the top of the machine, and there was a line of paper cups on that machine, and I was just, like, feeling like I was drowning, but I felt like I couldn't ask for help because they were, like, sink or swim, and I wanted to work there so bad. It really did feel like sink or swim, for
Yeah.
sure.
I feel like that happens a lot, like, in my f not necessarily in my field, but, like, in my corporate environment, it's very similar. It's like you have, like, a certain period of time to perform, and you always go into these roles initially with a feeling that you know what you're doing, and then you get in there and just,
Mhm. Oh,
like
yeah.
it's like the switch just turns off, and you're like, "I've forgotten everything that I knew that helped
Sure.
me get this role." And so
Absolutely. The things you learn in the training session versus the real world, like, I mean, I feel like this is not a good thing for me to say, but I think it's the truth is that nothing can really prepare you completely for what it is to be in a high stress environment and, like, do the thing. And then you can I mean, in my trainings, we do mock service where I'll throw a bunch of drinks at them at once, and it's a controlled environment, so, like, nobody's gonna complain if you mess up, but it is to try to stimulate that feeling of stress because coffee is, like it's high volume, it's we're moving, like, we don't have time for you to be freaking out, really, so
well, you also do,
yeah.
and I know this because, Veronica obviously has a coffee shop, and you've worked very closely with my wife to help her get that set up and get operations going. But you part of, like, your role is also consulting and going into the actual business and helping train, like, in real world environments. And so,
Sure, yeah, yeah.
yeah, curious if you could speak to that part of your role a little
Of
bit, and then how
going
you
into
approach
the
it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a work in progress. I think, I spent as a trainer, I spent most of my time working for a roasting company and training internally those baristas, which is really easy because I'm there all the time and they know me and I could hop behind that bar at any moment and start taking orders and nobody would bat an eye. But when I'm hired as an external consultant and I go into these spaces to try to train, a lot of times I would say there are other things besides training that influence how efficient a cafe can run. And that's a lot of times what I notice is like, okay, yeah, you know how to pull a shot, you know how to steam milk, you know how to taste this coffee and adjust it to taste better. But you can't get to the iced cups because there's something in the way, so you need to move those, and that's different, like, right? Like, that's just setting yourself up for success so that you can actually carry out the skills that we learned in class. So, when I go into a space, I'm thinking about where things first of all, I'm thinking about, like, how do people feel in the space? Does it feel like a comfortable, safe environment, or does it feel really stressful? Do the baristas seem happy? Do they seem like they're working together well? And then I'm looking at, like, how are things set up? Is it the most efficient way that this could be set up? And in the case of Veronica, like, I do I do believe that I got to talk to her before some things were installed, so it's, like,
Mhm.
easier if you ask for help before you do the thing, it's much easier, but, like, some people call me like, "Oh, we've been open for 5 years," and I'm like, "Oh, no, why'd you put the ice bin there?"
The
But
the
it's not
espresso machine is upside down. That might be
yeah,
your
right.
problem.
Yeah, and sometimes it's like, okay, well, the plumbing and like, there wasn't really
Sure.
another option, and then you
Yeah.
do what you can, but I think setting it up for efficiency from day 1 is really, really important for sure, and also
Yeah.
keeping the menu simple if you're just starting out, like, if you don't have a lot of coffee experience, don't overwhelm yourself. Like, it's okay to just serve the basics and a few fun signature drinks. Don't feel like you have to, like, offer everything that Starbucks offers to be competitive. It's you just do few things very well, efficiently, quality beverages consistently and efficiently, keep it clean, and you should be, pretty good. Those are the bare bones.
Yeah, that honestly, we do something very similar in my job. So part of like my role as a learning experience designer is to not just default to, oh, well, training is going to be the solution. A lot of times it's not. And so part of my role is like diagnosing the actual problem. And a lot of times it turns out to be process oriented, workflow oriented, or communication, and so then, having those conversations with whoever I'm partnering with, like, rather than having somebody sit through this training, I don't think the skill part is a problem. It's like, let's just tweak these few things, and you'd be surprised how much more efficient things can
Yeah,
run by just
it's
and the
all
time
together.
savings too, like, right,
Mhm,
for in your case, it's the time savings for the staff and the business owner and even
mhm.
yourself, whereas in my case, it's time savings from, like, the employee population of even having to sit through all that training when
Sure.
that wasn't even the problem to start with. Cool. So I want to dig into your classes a little bit. So
Okay, great.
latte art 101.
Yep,
This is the class I took. I loved
yep.
it. But I also went in, even though like part of my role is like I'm a creative, I'm a designer. I think that I'm a creative first before
Mm.
I'm a learning experience designer. And so I like to think that I can be creative. But in this experience, I just felt like I fumbled all over the place
No.
I just like I was lacking confidence going again. I'm like, I can't coordinate like my 2 hands together in this
Yep,
scenario, but I left feeling a lot more confident. I was able to make, the heart
great.
design, and so that was like that's I made something, that was my goal.
Yep.
Uh, Curious how you approach, like, these individuals, even, like, one-on-one, because everybody is coming
Mhm.
in with different level of experience or reasons why they're taking the class. How you tailor that learning to somebody who is maybe lacking confidence or lacking kind of the self-perception of their ability to do something like this. How do you
Yeah.
approach that, and how do you get people just to lean into the messy?
Oh, I love that. I wanna just say too, like, when don't like, give yourself some credit because a lot of people think latte art is like, "I can draw. I'm gonna be good at
Right,
latte art," but you're learning with an entirely do new utensil. Like, and
right.
you have to do 2 at the same time. It's really difficult. It's harder than it looks. But I think setting the stage for people to feel safe to fail and also, like, celebrating everything that happens in the room because it's just fun, and honestly, like, you can drink everything you make, even if it doesn't look right, it still tastes good. So I think, like, making sure people feel like everything that happens in the class is a success because you
Yeah,
tried, and part of the way that I try to do that is I have a little bingo card of, like, all of the common mistakes that happen when you don't know what you're doing yet. And so if you, like, scratch off all the bingo cards, you get, like, I don't know, a little prize, but,
yeah.
that helps, I think, to gamify the
Yeah,
failure, I think
yeah.
is a smart way to do it, and then also, like, this is true of any class, but when I know a little bit more about my students' background, I think that helps me to be a better teacher, so especially with, like, training baristas, like, with a home barista class, people usually are coming because they're interested in it, which is great. That makes my job really easy because I don't have to, like, get the engagement, right? They're just,
Right.
like they're coming because they wanna do something fun, and
Yeah.
then the whole thing there is just be like, you know, "I'm glad that you decided to do this today with me. Thank you." Please drink as much coffee as you want, and everything that happens is gonna be a win. But I think with with whole professional training,
Yeah.
you definitely have to understand, like, this is people's jobs, it's not their hobby. Like, they probably like it enough to do it for work, but it's not, like, everyone's passion. So I
Right,
think,
right.
like, finding what outside of work really drives them will help to understand, like, everything is connected. So whether or not you care about latte art, you probably care about something else. And if I can tap into that and find a way that, like, you learning this new skill is gonna help you everywhere else in your life, which I think is true.
So in a professional environment, how that messiness plays a role in your teaching to just fail fast and
Mhm.
learn fast. I mean, that's
Yeah.
something that within my role in the companies I've worked for in the past, it's a very common theme. It's, just, we're not striving for this like top grade. We're just like, let's move forward, let's learn fast, and it's okay to fail because that's going to get us closer to the ideal state
Mhm.
with speed. So
Yeah.
curious how that plays a role
Yeah, I mean,
in.
yeah, every attempt is a success. Like you're not going to get worse. Like the more you do it, the easier it will be. I think also it's important to note that my classes are only 90 minutes long. Like and I do that on purpose because, first of all, ain't nobody got the attention span for anything longer than 90 minutes. I mean, I don't even have that. Like, after I start to notice, like, my energy definitely dips at that 90-minute mark. So I try to keep it, efficient, succinct. Yeah. What was I saying about that? That got me. See, there's the attention span. I'm like, wait a second. um, yeah. I also think it helps, and I learned this the hard way. I am the instructor. Okay. They come in and they assume that I'm the best latte artist in the world, I think. And that is intimidating. So, what I've learned to do over time is I pour first, I show them how I do it, and I make sure that I don't do anything crazy. So I will go, watch me do it, and then when I go over, everyone hovers around. There's 6 people in the class, they all hover around me, they get their phones out to videotape me. That is very stressful for me, even as like a veteran barista, it doesn't matter, I'm still nervous, all these people are watching me, I'm the teacher, if I mess up, like, they're gonna not think that I know what I'm doing. So I got in the habit of kind of as a joke, but also, like, I think it helped is to just tell myself out loud in front of my students, "Take a deep breath. You're a great barista. Latte art is easy." And then I pour.
The mantra. Yeah.
That's the mantra, right? And then I pour a very simple heart. I sometimes, you know what? Sometimes it goes great, sometimes it doesn't. And I think that it depends on my mood that day. It depends on how long the coffee was sitting there. Like there's all these other factors. And so I think it's
Yeah.
really helpful for my students to see me be a real person in front of them who is not perfect, and then to still say after that, "Well, it's a practice, you know? I'm still practicing. I will be practicing for as long as I do this, and I'm sure somebody else is gonna pour a better heart than that during this class." Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'll say mine wasn't better than yours, but it was pretty good. It was pretty
Hey,
good.
there you go.
Now, like, I feel like maybe I need to go back and get a refresher because now my shapes are just kind of wild, and I've gotten creative with,
Um,
I don't know what they're called, but they're like latte art, like they almost look like mini spears that you can
oh,
use
yeah,
to,
like they do.
yeah, the etching,
Sure,
yeah.
and it's
So
yeah,
I'm just
it's
like, yeah, I
art.
get creative with that.
Fun.
It's fun.
Super
It's still
fun. We're
art.
just playing
Yeah.
with our food. That's what
Yeah.
we're doing.
Um, well, your next class that I haven't taken this one, but it looks really fun.
Mhm.
Coffee brewing science. Now,
Oh,
this is a
yeah.
class that sounds like it involves a lot of different variables, kind of the extraction process, the kind of precision that goes into building that perfect drink. And so, I'm curious how you teach someone to respect that process or what goes into that, while also still trusting their own senses.
Oh, yeah,
Right?
sure,
Yeah.
sure. I think it's always helpful to remind people at the top of any coffee class that coffee is a plant that takes 3 to 5 years to be harvestable. It does not grow in Texas, at least not yet, is what I always say, maybe one day. But it basically what I'm trying to say is it has gone through an incredibly long and arduous process to arrive in its brewable state. And so as a barista, and even as a home barista, as a coffee lover, it is the least we can do to try to brew it well and to brew it with
Yeah.
intention. Because when we do that, we're respecting everybody that's came before us in the supply chain by trying to care an ounce as much as what is required to be a coffee farmer. So I think that really helps.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I will like in my own process now, I've I will say I don't necessarily get to a point where I throw away like a pulled
Mhm.
shot just because
Sure.
I'm like, this like came out too fast or what have you. I'll still drink it, but I don't
Mhm.
enjoy it as much. But I understand,
Sure.
what
I mean,
where it
espresso
should
is
be.
not as forgiving. I think,
Yeah.
drip coffee, pour over, as long as you're measuring it out and using good water at the right temperature, It's pretty I mean, it's hard to mess it up too much. Espresso is just there's a lot of variables.
Yeah.
It's
So,
finicky, yeah.
then to that point, in this professional setting where somebody kind of this happens a lot in my work, not
Mhm.
necessarily just at like, within the company I'm in now, but just in the field, we get lost in all the data and the
Oh,
science
yeah,
of it,
yeah. Mhm.
and sometimes it's easy to forget that you're building something for a human,
Yep.
and in this case, like, creating the perfect coffee drink for somebody who's just really maybe having a bad day and just wants
Sure.
to enjoy something great for the day. So,
Yeah.
how do you get those that you teach to always kind of remember that and just like
Mhm.
it's great to follow that process, like, you encourage that, but at the end of the day, the end receiver of whatever you're creating is human, and so,
Yeah.
like, there's
I
also, like, this emotional connection to the process.
sure. I think going on the same point is of like, okay, this coffee's gone through so many hands and so many people have worked very hard for it to get to us today. I think it is helpful to remember that brewing is the littlest sliver at the end, right? So, if you even if you mess it up, it will probably be fully caffeinated, so you'll get that. And also, if you serve it with love to someone you love, like, of course, they're gonna be appreciative. Very few people I mean, I don't wanna say this because, it kind of, like, hurts my heart a little bit, but it's the hard truth, is that very few people are gonna taste the coffee and say, "This is under extracted," right? Like, most people most people don't do that. They're just gonna
You'd be
enjoy the
surprised, like,
coffee.
my mother now has
Really?
gotten so, like,
Oh.
I mean, her palate is refined.
Well,
So,
you know what?
she'll
When
tell
there's
me when I
I
make her
like
she
that.
comes over on for breakfast on the weekends, and
Mhm.
she's like, "Yeah, this doesn't taste as good as something Veronica would make, like, let's try
Wow.
again."
Oh my gosh. Well, good for her. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think having that kind of sensory perception is a superpower, and it
yeah.
is something you can develop. But I always just, it's much easier for me with this question with home baristas because it's just a practice and it's just a hobby. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, of course, we can go into the science of this. There's so many Reddit forums. There's so many 45-minute long YouTube videos. If you want to learn about coffee, there is no shortage of information out there. But I think what's happening, and I wonder if this is happening in other industries, but where, as far as I see it in coffee, there's been like in the last 5, 10 years, this wave of data driven approach that it's
Mhm,
like we're going to find the most precise, exact chemistry of the perfect brew. And this always frustrated me a lot. And I think because I am a more creative person at whichever side of the brain that is, like I don't naturally gravitate towards data and science.
mhm.
But I was really frustrated by that because I was like, well, because when you do that, it almost feels like you take the magic out of it a little bit,
Yeah,
right? Because you're like going into all these different elements. But I also think like coffee is not something that is data alone. Like it's not.
right.
It's sensory, which means it's tied to not just your senses, but your memory and the context of the situation. And so to take a data-driven approach, like every time somebody serves me an espresso and they're like, "This is 25% extraction and whatever." I'm like, "Okay, but what does it taste like?" Like
Yeah.
how would you describe can you please just try to give me some flavor notes because that's how I understand it and everyone's different. So I don't know. I think it's both. I think coffee is just both. It's science and art 100%. Yeah.
I think you can make an argument, like, everything is that,
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
think data too, it's data itself. So, there was this and I kick myself every time I tell this story because I cannot remember her name, but she, like her message stuck with me. I was at a conference. It was like a learning design conference, and she was
Mhm.
speaking. She was a data analyst for a big publication in the East Coast, and her stories had award winning. I think there was an exhibit based off her data at the Smithsonian. Like, I mean, this is like her passion, but the way she made data or way she presented data was like she leaned into her other passion of illustration. And
Mm,
so
yeah.
rather than just having normal charts and graphs that you see and everyone's like, okay, that's great. It's nice to know, but I'm never going to remember that.
Yeah.
She like went all in and found a theme for the data, created like these really detailed illustrations just to
Yeah,
really make
that's
it
fun.
sticky.
Mhm.
And the message was, data is inherently imperfect. You're never going to be able to capture every voice from every person that's within that audience. And
Yep.
if you're only, interviewing a few, chances are if you interviewed a group on the other side of the country, the results are going to be different. So it's
Yeah.
never going to be perfect. So be okay with
Mhm.
that.
Mhm, mhm.
And just the point is to really just tell a story.
Yeah,
And it
absolutely.
really
Uh-huh.
resonated with me because I was like, man, like this whole time I've been creating charts and graphs and it's just so boring when I have this superpower of being able to design. I should have been leaning into that just to tell the
To
story a little
make it
bit better.
fun,
But
yeah. I think,
yeah, and
oh,
so
that inspired me, reminds me too of, like, for me, I coming from a artistic background and going into something that's a little more scientific as you can't avoid it. It's not like I'm saying,
right.
"Don't do any science." I think you should coffee science is great, but what I started to see is it's, like, more of another instrument that I can use to understand something. It's not like I think there's this barrier of, like, "I don't get it, I'm not mathy, I'm not sciencey," but it's like, it don't like, maybe see it as, for me, pattern recognition. Like, that was the craziest moment when I was like, "Oh, wow, okay, I'm seeing this is starting to make sense in a way that's tangible, whereas before it was only made sense in a fluid, intuitive way. You told me that coffee was good and I trust you, so I said yes. But now I know that coffee is good because you told me and I trust you and I said yes, but also the data is showing because we measured it together that it hits the right box that we're trying to hit.
Yeah.
Woohoo! Like that's exciting.
That
That's
so the big
magic. Yeah.
yeah, and it brings up a great like you mentioned patterns, and so patterns are a big part of I think a lot of the research that I do in the space of education is just really trying to understand someone's like personal pattern of how they grasp concepts, how they process information. And it kind of takes me to this next class of yours, which is this sensory class,
Mhm.
because I think there's a lot of like pattern recognition when it comes to sensory and understanding that part of the coffee process.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you could tell us a little bit about that class and how you help others recognize their own like flavor pattern or their own flavor style. Is that even a thing? I feel like it would be, but
Sure. Yeah.
all right.
Yeah. Um, so the sensory development training I developed alongside Sarah Gibson, who's the co-founder of Sightseer Coffee, and she teaches roasting classes and I teach barista classes, and we were talking one day and we just kind of agreed like, man, nothing that we teach matters if people can't taste the difference. So we need to have a class where we go in, we isolate these different elements of senses, which is aroma, and basic tastes, acidity, and mouthfeel. And we do these isolated exercises to really mainly boost people's confidence. Like, it's not really like you can't do these things, it's just a reframing so that you have the vocabulary you need to talk about coffee.
Mhm.
So the class is really, really interactive. We go through these different stations where we do these calibration exercises that are very heavily inspired by the Q grader exam, which the Q is like the sommelier of the coffee world. It's
Yeah.
kind of recently become a little bit different, but I won't go down that rabbit hole. Basically, you smell these reference samples from this kit that people use around the world, and then you have to match them to the cotton ball and see how you do. Like, can you identify vanilla in a blind tasting? Um, and then you taste the basic taste: sour, sweet, salty, umami, bitter in different intensities to talk about, can you taste the difference between this very sour thing and this sort of sour thing? And then we go into the different types of acidity and whatnot. So that is to say, at the end, we do a coffee tasting and we apply everything that we've learned to the cupping table, which is very interesting and a little bit, I think it reveals that what holds people back from quote unquote being able to taste coffee well is more to do with their own mental blocks and less to do with their physical ability to taste things.
Mm,
I see this all the time that people, I could give them a starburst in their hand and guess what color it is, and they get it right, and then on the
yeah,
table, I say, "Doesn't this coffee remind you of fruit?" And they're like, "I can't do that. I don't know what you're saying." And it's like, "No, but you can't. It's just creative. It's just
yeah,
like, it's mostly creative." And being able to open that channel of describing your internal experience externally. We had this guy in class last week. I have to tell this story. He's so
sure.
sweet. He's this older man. And he did the class. He was pretty quiet during the class. And then after, he was talking to me and Sarah, and he said, "You know what this reminded me of? I'm trying to do this work with my therapist right now where I'm able to communicate about my emotions. And I feel like this class helped me, and it felt like the same thing of, like,
Yeah,
taking an internal experience and just verbalizing it and feeling safe enough to say out loud what you really think,
I
which,
love that.
gosh, we need more spaces like that, so
Yeah, that's amazing. That is amazing. Yeah, so you mentioned this, like this exercise that you go through of like the starburst thing,
mhm,
and I'm curious. So there's this thing, I guess, like at least I've experienced where like I would say my palate is not really refined. I mean, I grew up on like $2 Chuck versions of coffee in a
yeah,
giant can, and
sure,
it's just
sure.
like,
Yeah,
like
sure, sure,
use
sure.
paper towel as a filter
Yeah,
type thing. Uh,
mhm,
but now, like having access to a coffee shop, through my wife, and
yep, a good one.
sometimes I'll be there in the morning and they're dialing in the machine. Well, first of all, I didn't even know that was a thing, but
Mhm,
I learned very quickly, dial it in every morning, and then you taste like you taste a shot, you pull a shot, you taste it, and it's kind of how you measure. And the first time I tried that, I'm like in my mind, I was like, it tastes horrible.
sure.
But the barista was like, no, this is like dead on. This is
Mm,
perfect. And so
okay,
it was
well,
like my
yeah,
probably my not so refined palate, but curious, like, I mean, there was like some sort of pattern recognition happening there. Like this
uh-huh.
person experienced something that told them like this is right. And then when they made me a drink right after that, it was perfect. So I'm like, there
Yeah.
was something that I completely missed from that pattern that
Mm,
this person picked up. And they knew almost without tasting it that this is exactly how it should be.
sure,
And right.
yeah.
And they're right. Because like afterwards, I had a latte and it was dialed in perfectly. It tasted so good. And
Yeah,
so I'm curious, how does this conversation play into those real world environments? How do you
mhm.
help baristas like in that coffee shop
Yeah,
really recognize that pattern and be able to work with speed,
that's
right?
a good question. I mean, couple things come to mind. Number 1, you have to like the taste of coffee. If you don't like the taste of coffee and you're a barista, it's gonna be a tricky job because you really do have to taste the coffee to understand it and what it's capable of. I think for beginners, it's really helpful to have a recipe that pretty much always tastes pretty good, which
Mhm.
behind the scenes, that also means making sure that when you order the coffee that it's the right amount of time rested. So you can't put the coffee right in the grinder right away. You need to wait because it off gases and the gases are really volatile, which creates just drama in the espresso machine. So you want to let the coffee chill and then
Good
and
job.
then put it in there. Um, so that's important, and then also partnering with, like, a really solid roaster, as long as the roasted coffee is consistent and you have a recipe, let's say, like, just and for example, this is, like, the most common espresso recipe is, like, 18 grams in, 36 grams out, 30 seconds. Okay, you tell all the baristas that's what it should be, and then you teach them how to change the grind size to make sure that well, first of all, you teach them how to use the scales, and then you teach them how to pull the shot, and then you teach them how to change the grind size to get to 30 seconds, because if the grind size is off, then the time is gonna be off. So any barista can do that. I mean, that's like the goal, right? Like bare
Yeah.
minimum. You can get the shot to get in the box, and then you can serve that, and you can be pretty sure that it's gonna taste at least passable, okay? But to be a barista who can pick up on the nuance of those things and also design a recipe using a coffee they've never seen before is a different skill set. And I think that is where you need to be more to have a more refined palate, and a refined palate is honestly, this is gonna sound really fun and it's true, just taste more coffee. You just have to
Yeah.
taste all the coffee
Oh, I
and
try.
pay
I
attention.
try, and then I'm
And
wired.
find the tools that work for you. So not every
Yeah.
student is gonna taste an espresso and be able to tell me about the acidity, but every student, and I have taught so many people how to make espresso from all different backgrounds, all different ages, and I will tell you right now, if you drink the espresso and it feels aggressive or like it feels uncomfortable or bad or it makes you make a face, if you sip it and you're like, "Whoa." No, never good. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how, and my grandma could tell you that. It's not good. Like, you have to change something. It should taste smooth. It's like
Right.
whiskey. It's really strong. So if you're not used to the intensity of the flavor, then it doesn't you could put a, you know, the average whiskey drinker, I guess, like, wouldn't they would be able to tell the difference between the cheapest bottle and the nice bottle, but then when you get into the nuance of the different nice bottles, it's trickier to be like, "I don't know, they're all," but you know that they're not, sharp, like, they're
Yeah.
smooth, right? They go down
Yeah.
smooth, and espresso's like the same. It should go down smooth, it shouldn't be an uncomfortable experience, and if it is, it's
Yeah.
not dialed in. But, I mean, this I'm literally just teaching you the class right now, but it
Yeah.
could be like,
Well,
you
thank
know
you.
you know what I mean? But I think it puts it into perspective of, like, if you
Yeah.
have to understand who your student is, and if they are
Right.
not a person who likes espresso, then just give them the recipe and let them do the job that you hired them to do. But if they're
Yeah.
someone who loves coffee and is coming to an espresso class to learn more, then my job as a trainer is to make you feel confident in what you taste and make you feel like what you taste is valid because of course it is. You're not lying to me. Like, you're telling me straight up what you're experiencing. So I
Yeah.
can help you find the vocabulary so that we can be talking about the same thing. It's like learning a language.
You mentioned something, before I forget. So you mentioned something about tools being like maybe they're using the wrong tools. Like maybe
Mhm.
there's, and so it kind of gave me this maybe feeling like there's like this sense of sometimes personalization in the way someone's taught
Mhm.
or the tools that they use in order to fit within like their way of working. And that's something that we like that concept has been around in education for some time, but no one's really executed on it well outside of
Mhm.
like a hands-on type of training where you like classroom setting. A lot of time, uh, K-12 educators are really great
Yeah.
at personalizing learning for a specific student in their classroom. But when you think
Mhm.
about scaling that
Sure.
to like
Yeah.
10,000 employees, it becomes a challenge. But
Mhm.
curious, like what, like through your teachings and your maybe primarily like your professional consulting,
Mhm.
w- how does personalization play a role in the way you teach? And how
Mm.
have you seen it create like huge impact for getting someone upskill
Um,
relatively quickly?
because I kinda had to, like, a lot of when I first started Barista Friend, I one of the first challenges I encountered was that small businesses don't wanna pay for many hours of training, they wanna pay
Hmm.
for 2 hours of training. And I'm like, "Okay, so how can I" so that kind of put me in a spot of like, "Okay, how can I teach you how can I get you ready to do this job in 2 hours?" And instead of like, I mean, I guess a different person might have been like, "I can't. I can't do that. I will refuse
Sure.
because of what it says about my craft." I was like, "Okay, well, challenge accepted." Like, how can I efficiently teach this for all learning styles to make sure that someone leaves here knowing what they need to know to be good at, to be decent? They don't have to be the best barista ever, but to be able
Yeah.
to like competently do the job. And I think that comes down to I do every learning style. And I do that intentionally because I am, and if you watch my class, like if you are in class with me, you'll notice that I'm drawing everything. Everything has a as a whiteboard version. I'm saying it, and then we do 2 or 3 exercises to demonstrate what we just learned. So it's all of those things visual, and then also I have a handout for some of my classes. So if you like to write it down, you can fill in the blanks. But we're kind of it's very high energy, like, we're kinda moving between things really quickly where I'm like, "Okay, let me draw this for you. Okay, now let's get on the machine. Okay, now fill in your handout and see if you can miss any of the blanks. Okay, let me show you another picture." And I think because it's that high energy, like, I like to think that I'm hitting it from so many different sides, and the concepts are so simple that it's inherently being personalized because people are gonna take what they need and leave what they don't, but what they need is the recipe. So as long as I can get them, like, there, right,
Yeah.
then that's
Yeah.
helpful. That's why it's
Um,
great to have, like, if you're a coffee trainer and you work at with one company and you are their dedicated trainer, then that's, like, so much easier because you can if someone's having a bad day, you just catch them on another day. I think, um it's important to remember that and this is probably relevant to other industries as well, but specialty coffee is relatively new, and the science is relatively new, and also the practice of doing a specialty coffee shop the way that we see it these days is new, and so a lot of us who are in a position of being educators are kind of learning as we go and figuring out, like, I didn't go to education school. I'm just trying to figure out how to be a good teacher based on the success of my students and keep tweaking as I go, and I think right now we have a workforce that's incredibly, like, we're all kinda, like, brain rotted a little bit. Sorry to say it, but it's like it is kind of like getting people's attention and keeping it for a long period of time is very challenging. I think it helps that I was a theater kid, so I try to be engaging, and it is kind of like a performance at the end of the day. I think it's important to remember that being a teacher, being an educator doesn't necessarily mean that you're, like, the expert in the room, but you're more of a guide for everyone's
mhm.
learning, practice, and, like, you're just kind of setting everybody on the track and guiding them along and providing little assistance along the way, and you're all heading towards hopefully, if you work for a company, like, you're all headed towards the same goal, and your role as the educator is just to keep learning and keep people
Yeah.
engaged and provide what you can so that people have the tools they need to do their jobs well. So it doesn't mean you have to be like the best barista in the
Right.
world.
And I will say, I know like part of being an educator is being a lifelong learner.
Mhm.
Like you're constantly learning, you're constantly iterating your process. And like one of the reasons I wanted you on this podcast is because, like, from my experience being both in a student in your class, but also seeing the consulting side, like you've got something really special that in the way that you teach, it just I don't know, it just feel like you've found a way to help everyone feel comfortable, and
No,
that's, like, the
thank you.
biggest challenge. Once
Sure.
you get people to, like, pull down that wall, they start to engage,
Mhm.
and then they find the fun in
Yeah.
education, and I think you do a really great job at that, so,
Thanks.
you're basically like a learning experience designer already.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great. That's
So
funny.
if you
Somebody
ever wanna transition
I
into corporate environments.
that's so funny. I had a student a couple of months ago that told me that thing, which is so funny. And before you reached out to me, she was like, "I work in learning." This is the first time I ever heard learning and development, but she was like,
Mhm.
took my espresso class, and afterwards she was like, "I work in learning development, and you just did like everything you're supposed to do." And I was
Right.
like, "Okay, I don't know. Yay."
Great. Yeah, I will say a lot of times, like, even though like we're kind of coded as professionals in L&D, I mean, a lot of times I'm like, wow, that worked. Awesome.
Yeah,
Might expect
but
that to happen, but
yeah, it's so beautiful.
that's part
It's
of the
such a
process. You
beautiful
gotta
thing.
pilot
Yeah.
something and try it and sometimes you just gotta you go into something as informed as possible, but you're never gonna know everything. And
Yeah,
so I think that was
totally.
a really great point for everyone to hear. I want to start to wrap us up a little bit and
Mhm.
I want to just ask you a question around if I were to take one lesson away from the way that you instruct and pull that into my role as a corporate educator, what would that
Mm.
be?
Always have coffee at the meeting.
Alright, done.
Yeah. Make sure there's coffee available. Get people caffeinated before you start teaching. I mean, oof,
Yeah.
that's one I learned the hard way. No, I think it's hard to see outside of myself. I like to think that my classes are like my passion really shines through the like, you can tell that I really love this stuff, and I'm not faking it, like, I
Yeah.
genuinely really do, and I have found so much joy and so much beauty in the process of making coffee, whether that's, like, espresso or learning more about roasting and the side like, the green coffee side of things. I just have a lot of, like, respect and even reverence for the whole, system that I'm part of, and, I try to stay humble. I think that really helps too, and I'm not perfect, I'm still human, and of course I wanna be the best all the time, but
Yeah.
I think, remember again that you are in the room, you're a leader as an
Mhm.
educator, and you set the tone, and, like, come in try to come in with your whole heart and see how that changes it, like and I don't know, this yeah.
That resonates with me because there have been times where being on the student side of things, you can feel that a specific educator, maybe that's not their passion or that's
Mhm.
not their right role. And it's not just like a one off day where they're having a
Yeah.
bad day. It's like the entire year they're
Yeah.
just very unhappy in this role,
Yeah, sure.
partly because a lot of teenage kids are obnoxious. I get it. I was, as a teenage kid, I was annoying, I'm sure. Um, but then there are the educators who I like to think are the majority who just really love the job and love
Yeah.
creating impact and molding minds. And it makes such a
Mhm.
difference. I'll never forget my third grade reading teacher. She just instilled in me to want more, and, in my 20s, I didn't really know what that was, and fair. But as
Yeah.
I got older, that those lessons stuck with me. And so just very similar to the way that the lessons from like your one of your first jobs at a coffee shop, like that
Yeah.
owner stuck with you. And
Sure.
so
Yeah.
so it's really important to have that passion. It's really important to
Yeah.
love what you do and bring that into the classroom. And so
Mhm. It's
um
cool to care. It's really
yeah,
cool
it's
to
cool to
care.
care. Let's
Yeah.
make a t-shirt. It's cool to care.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Miranda, thank you so much for being here
No problem.
again the second time. I really appreciate it. I always enjoy our conversations. I think that there's just so much rich information that you have to share, and I really appreciate learning from you. For those of you that are in the Austin area and want to take one of Miranda's classes, you can go to yourbaristafriend.com and choose from the list of classes. Check out the calendar. Highly encourage you to do that. And if you're want to see more content like this, you can go to rickyratcliffe.com or find us on Spotify by searching for Learning Playground. All right. Until next time, see you later.
Thanks, Ricky.